Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
We're going to be reviewing the ALLPOWERS S2000 solar generator next on the Let's Review. All right, Jesse, do you need a battery?
What do you mean by battery?
I know, they call them solar generators now, and I don't know. It's
to drop in to the generator market, because
right.
if you need a generator,
it would confuse people if you called it a battery.
If you call it a battery, it's like, well, you know, what's a battery? This is a battery. It also has all of the magical gizmo stuff so that you can, these look familiar from your wall. Right, you can plug in just normal appliances to it.
And look, I get it. You've been looking around the internet trying to decide which one's right for you, because there's so many. That's why we've reviewed a lot on this channel. And I want to go through the specs on this one and give you our thoughts, pros and cons about whether we like it or not. So let's get into it. So this is the ALLPOWERS S2000 solar generator portable power station, 2000 watts. And it's confusing because I'm going to say 2000 watts, but I'm also going to say 1500 watt hours. So now I've confused you and the consumer, right? 2000 watts means how much power you can get out of it at any one time for like a hairdryer. 1500 watt hours is how much it stores. And we're going to talk about both those things.
So watts is how much power, and watt hours is, you know, power, but for how long?
Right.
Okay.
So they claim it's a 1500 watt hour battery, and we tested that. So we plugged an air conditioner into it, ran that for about 4 hours until it was from 100 to 0. And we found out that it has 1130 watt hours, not 1500. And that's normal. Don't think like, oh no, they lied to you. All batteries do this. They say what their stated number is if everything was 100%, and that's not usually what you get out of them.
So there's energy stored in the batteries. It has to convert that chemical energy in the battery into electrical energy, send that DC current up to the inverters. The inverters have to do their magic to turn it into, you know, 60 or 50 hertz AC at a given voltage. There's some losses in that, and then it's going to send it out to whatever you're doing. We used an electricity meter to basically tell us how much energy came out of the plug itself.
Yeah, and you're seeing a time lapse now of running that experiment. And the reason I want to do this for you guys is normally when you go to the store and there's the price on the supermarket, and then there's the little orange price usually below it, which is the price per pound or the price per ounce. Most of us don't look at that, but that is very valuable to look at, right? Because you're comparing apples to oranges sometimes, you know, a big jar of something and a little jar. So when you guys are out there looking for these, here's what I'd like you to do. Take that 1500 watt hours, divide it by the price. So that's watt hours per dollar. And then you'll be able to see. So, but actually what I'd rather you do is watch our reviews where we tell you what you actually get out of the battery. So in this case, you're gonna get about 60 cents per watt hour. That way, if you wanna compare a bunch of things, you can be like, oh, that one's more expensive, that one's cheaper.
And when we're talking about the grocery analogy, like you could buy 2 pounds of apples, but that includes the core, which you're not gonna eat. And it's like, so yes, you're buying 2 pounds of apples, but you're not necessarily going to consume 2 pounds of apples.
I might be selling pre-cored apples. You know?
Right, and that's why it might be more expensive.
Right.
But anyway, when we tested it, we got 1,130 watt hours of energy stored.
Right, so price-wise, you can find this with this. So this is a kit, it's a solar kit. We'll talk about the panels in a second. You can buy it separately if you want. The kit I've seen for $17.99, but there's a lot of 20% discount coupons and stuff. So realistically, you're probably gonna be getting it for $14.59. So that's roughly the price we're talking about, and that's this plus the solar panels. Let's get into what you can do with it. As you can see here on the front, you got 4 AC outlets, and those can put out 2000 watts, but that's not all. It actually puts out 4000 watts surge. So for instance, when you fire up a lot of things like a refrigerator, for a split second, the motor is drawing a lot of current, and then it settles down. It's nice when a battery can put out a big surge current to take care of that, or else you're not gonna be able to run things like,
you know, refrigerators, AC units, air compressors, anything practically with a motor that has to kind of kick on, that all has surge current.
Right. So it's nice, 2000 watts, and it's a pure sine wave, which we'll get into in a second. And I think what you're gonna probably wanna do when you're thinking about buying these is list the things you realistically wanna use it for. Space heater, you know, television, CPAP machine, right? So that you know what you're gonna be drawing, and that way you can kind of put together, is this enough power coming out of these 4 outlets? Because 4 outlets doesn't mean you get to multiply that by 2000 each time. It's 2000 total. And so make sure that it's gonna have enough juice to power everything that you wanna power at one time.
And for long enough.
But of course, we live in the world of USB outlets. It's got 4 USB-As, which are the bigger ones. It's got 2 USB-Cs. Those can pull 100 watts, which is great because a lot of things like tablets pull a lot of power.
And laptops and stuff like that. So you can get, you know, fast charging through that without needing a wall wart.
And it's got a cigarette lighter or car port or power port, whatever you want to call it. This plugs into your car most times. And it comes with this cable, which is cool. And you might be like, well, what's on the other end of that cable? Well, that is so that you can actually power this from your car, so you can charge it up from your car.
Oh, so you can charge this up from a regular wall outlet in your house, you can charge it up from your car, and you can charge it with the solar?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll go through all three. So yeah, you can plug it into the car. It's gonna take a lot longer because your car's only putting out 12 volts, but it's one way to do it if you're camping and that's all you got. And as Jesse mentioned, you can plug it into the wall. And what I love about this unit is, if you look on the back here, there's only one simple plug there. It's for a ubiquitous cord. We see these all over the place. Your computer uses them, all sorts of things use them. Plug that in there, plug that into your wall. You don't need a big charger. And so if you happen to lose this or got it damaged, you can get another one easy.
And what I love about that is that in the case of an emergency, if you really need to charge this thing up and you don't even have time to run to the store, you will most likely be able to find that cord somewhere in your house.
Right.
It's very ubiquitous.
Or in the world.
You just start looking on the back of things, and sure, you might have to unplug something like your TV, but then you can get this thing charged and do whatever you need to do, which is really good.
Okay, so like I said, it puts out a pure sine wave, and you might not care, but what's nice about that is that it's great for electronics and sensitive equipment. So don't worry about plugging laptops into this. Your Starlink. I mean, this is perfect for going out into the camping world and bringing your Starlink along. Here's where I want to stop everybody, because I thought that all batteries were automatically uninterruptible power supplies, or UPSs. A lot of us at home have them in the office where you got this little brick where you plug in your computer and it's actually a little battery. And so if the power were to sag or have a brownout for a second, it kicks in and you don't notice anything happen. So I thought, oh, well, these automatically are that.
Oh, so like I have one connected to my computer. When the power goes out, it'll start beeping at me, but my computer stays on so I can save my work,
right,
and then shut down the computer properly and then turn off the battery, which has been beeping at me. So this isn't a UPC?
Right, so it's confusing. So your UPC is not using its battery most of the time. It's just sitting there waiting, gets a signal, oh, the grid went out. I'm gonna turn on my battery instantaneously and you'll never notice, right? This doesn't have the circuitry for that. Some of these batteries in the world do, but not this particular one.
Oh, so normally a UPC is having pass-through direct from the wall.
Right.
But I mean, this could function as a UPC of sorts.
You could, except here's the caveat. If you knew that there was a lightning storm coming, you could plug this into the wall, plug in your computer into this, and then if the power went out or if there was a surge, this would take care of it, right? You would never lose power.
So then what's the difference?
The problem is that's only if you know something bad's gonna happen. If you wanna plug this in 24/7, 365 days a year, then what you're doing is you're cycling the battery. It's taking power from the wall and charging the battery, then the battery power is going out to your laptop, which means that you're unnecessarily using the battery every day. And this thing can only cycle for about 2,500 times before it starts to lose battery life. If that's something you need an uninterruptible power supply, look for a brand that sells the circuitry in it.
But functionally, it kind of works the same way. It's just that over a long period of time, you're damaging the battery unnecessarily.
Right, it would work fine if you're only gonna use it that way a couple times a year. Great, then forget what I just said. But if this is like gonna solve some problem of yours every day of your life, I would switch to something else. Otherwise, you're just using it up for no reason.
I see.
All right, so let's talk about how long it takes to charge it, because a lot of times you're gonna go use it up and then want it again.
Well, I was looking on their website and it says that it charges up in 1.6 hours. That's like less than an hour and 45 minutes.
All the brands do this that can take multiple inputs. They say basically in kind of a asterisk, if you plug all of the inputs in at the same time. So in this case, they're not lying. If you plug it into the wall and you plug it into solar, you can charge it 1.6 hours if the sun's out.
So that means that I would need to have this battery close enough to the wall where I can plug it in, but it's also outside close enough to the solar panels that I can plug in the solar panels.
And here's my argument, folks. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm
Sure.
not saying they're lying, but I'm just saying in real life use, you're either gonna charge it one way or the other. So let me give you the real way to do it. If you charge it from the wall only, it's gonna pull about 360 watts, and in our testing, it took about 3 hours to charge it full.
Okay, and then if you were doing it with solar, it really depends on the solar.
Well, we tested that too, and so this is a 400 watt solar panel. On just pretty much any day, you can get 200 watts out of these panels, like without trying too hard, as long as you've got some decent sun. You can easily get up to close to 400 watts though. It really depends on that. So if you're pulling, say 360, you'll charge it in about 3 hours. If you're at 200, it's gonna take more like 5 or 6 hours. So realistically, on a good sunny day, in a day, you can charge this back up from the sun.
And specifically, we're talking about making sure that your solar panels are in the sun, facing the sun, and ideally pointed directly at the sun.
And that there's nothing blocking any one at all. If you even put a little bit of shade in the corner there, it brings down the efficiency of the entire panel. So when you set this out, don't just be like, well, there's a couple little tree branches in the way. No, you really should make sure it's in the clear.
Right, keep the camp chairs away from it, keep anything, it needs to be in direct sunlight, no exceptions.
What's really cool here is that built into this is the MPPT, or the solar controller, that does all the work of figuring out how to take this and convert it into that. And that's really cool, and that's this cable right here. So these are MC4 male and female. They're gonna plug into your panels. You're seeing that here. All the cables come right here in this little bag, all attached, so it's great. This is 9 feet long, by the way, so you need some space.
And it's 50 pounds.
Yeah, it's 50 pounds. So this is 32 pounds. This is 50 pounds. And again, that's just what things weigh.
Yeah.
But just be aware that, like, you know, we're big tough guys and it's still a lot of weight to pull around.
Yeah. Now they do sell versions with 200 watt panels and with 100 watt panels. So if 50 pounds is going to be way too much for you to handle, you can get multiple panels, daisy chain them together. And that way, like, there's more to bring, but it all doesn't weigh so much. The other cool thing is that since they included the MC4 connectors, you can hook this up to pretty much any solar panel.
And it just plugs right in the front.
You don't want to over voltage it, you don't want to over amp it. Do a little bit of research if you're going to do that, but it is really cool that they went with the international standard of solar panels.
Yeah. And by the way, these are IP67 waterproof, so you can leave them out pretty much all the time, not really worry about it too much.
They will get wet.
They'll get wet,
but it's not going to affect how they work.
Exactly.
They might get heavier because this material will absorb some water, and then they're going to be even heavier and wet.
You can buy these separately, by the way. I've seen them for like $6.99, a lot of coupons out there, so you can get them for like $5.50 with some coupons. But if that gives you some idea, because if you're looking at just the package, sometimes you're like, well, what is that worth and what is that worth? I do want to mention that when you are charging this from the wall, or most times that you're charging it, it needs to cool itself off. So it's got fans built in. That's normal for a lot of these batteries. What's not normal is that some batteries have better fans and quieter fans and some don't. These fans are loud. I've seen that, not just, I thought maybe it was just our unit, but I looked at a lot of reviews and a lot of people. It's a very loud, obnoxious frequency. It's around 1500 hertz. So if it's, you know, somewhere where you don't care, great. But if it's in your cabin or in your tent, I'm gonna tell you now, it's probably gonna be annoying while it's doing its work. And that's something you should think about, because if this is to run your CPAP machine or something, then that's a problem.
It really depends on the air temperature in wherever you are. And if there's sun beating down on it, obviously it's gonna have to kick on those cooling fans. It also depends on how much it's drawing. So I mean, if you're like charging your phone, probably not gonna kick on.
Right.
If you're in, you know, room temperature.
It's mainly during charging of this battery.
Right, because it's gonna be pulling in 300 watts and converting it into DC, it's gonna have to do a lot of work and cool itself off.
We're putting the dimensions up here on the screen. And so as you're thinking about those dimensions, I wanna point out one thing that a lot of people have talked about, which is these handles. They're really nice, it's quality handles, they feel good, and it's in a good spot for me to lift. But they do stick up, and so for a lot of people, they said they would have loved to have put a laptop on top or something else, and these kind of make that impossible. You can remove them, some people have, but I just think it would have been nice for them to think about that and keep them flush. It comes with a nice little cover to keep the dust off of it, which is great if you're storing it. And now I want to talk about vampire drain, because a lot of times you're going to start using this and you're going to kind of set it, forget it. And vampire drain is one of those things you don't learn about till after you have a EV or a battery. Vampire drain means all those little bits of energy that are being used when you don't know it. So like you have a television, right? And probably it's off right now, but it's using a little bit of energy and you don't seem to know about that. Well, normally,
who cares?
Who cares, right?
Plugged right into the grid.
I mean, you care because you're paying for it, but here it matters because as you have this just sitting there and it's on, but you don't have anything using it, you think, oh, well, it must not be using any power. But it is, it's got circuitry. And so if the screen's on, it's using a little bit of energy. And what we found in our testing is in about 12 hours, you're gonna use about 15% of the battery's power. So it has quite a bit of vampire drain, just something to keep in mind that if you're not using it, keep it off.
Right, and you know, that's because it has to keep on the electronics, you know, the inverter needs to stay on and stuff like that if you leave it on. So
I think a lot of it is actually probably the Bluetooth.
And let's talk about the Bluetooth. This can Bluetooth over to your phone via an app. And so what the app is going to allow you to do is pretty much everything you can do on the screen.
Yeah, I had seen, it gets a really low Google rankings, whatever, so I was like, oh, it's gonna be awful. But it's not bad. Basically, you can do all the functionality you can do on the front of the unit on your app. So nothing super great, but here's what you can do. You can see the battery state of charge. You can see the remaining battery time. You can see the input and output wattages, and you can turn on and off the AC and the DC. So basically everything you do at the battery, you can do away from the battery. So I don't see why there's a big problem with that. I don't need anything fancy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there could be other features that you could implement, but they would all cost more money because they would all involve more hardware.
Right.
So it's nice that it can connect via Bluetooth. Again, that Bluetooth will use some of the energy, so you have to keep all of that in mind.
So we've already walked through some of the pros and cons. I guess just one other con. I've seen a lot of these batteries starting to offer wireless charging, and I've just gotten so used to it that I do that a lot. I put my phone...
wireless phone charging.
Yeah. And so I assume it's there, but this doesn't have it. And I kind of think that's a missing, it wouldn't cost them much to add it, and we all have phones now, and it's so nice to just like drop your phone on the thing instead of, I don't want to go find a USB cable and all that, whatever phone you have. So I don't know. I just think in the future, these companies should add that.
All right, and let's wrap everything up. You get free shipping when you order online, and it comes with a 5-year warranty and a 30-day money-back guarantee.
I like that a lot because I think that there's features that we just talked to you about that you may not fully understand till you get the unit. So it's important to have that. I like companies that back things up, and I like the 5-year warranty. Keep in mind, like we talked about, there's 2,500 cycle life to this battery. That's pretty normal. Every cycle kind of slowly, not kills the battery, but it just degrades how good it is. It's still probably gonna work after 2,500 cycles, but you won't have as much storage in it.
Yeah, and so 2,500 is the typical kind of lithium-ion realm.
And I've seen a lot of people talk about that as if it's a bad thing, but I just want to, depends on your use case. If you're gonna use it every single day, then do the math. That's gonna happen to you in 2,500 divided by 365, so that's gonna happen to you in 6 years.
Right.
But come on, are you gonna use it that often? Probably you're gonna use it once a week. So that's 50 into 2,500. So we're talking a long time before you're gonna get to that point.
Yeah, I think that a battery like this is a great tool. It's something that we really haven't had in the tool chest for many people. I mean, sure, you can stick a 12-volt inverter on a 12-volt battery in your car or something like that, and maybe pull out 300 watts. But something where you can plug in pretty much anything in your house into is really, really cool.
The more we use it, the more we use it. So the other day we have an old MG that we converted into an electric car, but it still got a 12-volt battery in it, and that battery was dead. And instead of having to run miles of extension cord, we just went out there with this. Yeah, that was awesome. We've been working out in our solar trailer and plugging all kinds of lights and tools into this, and it works great. So there's just so many uses now where I'm like, I go to battery.
Yeah, it's kind of like a really heavy end to an extension cord that doesn't connect up to almost anything.
Yeah.
I really encourage you to think about how you're going to use this. What is the use case before you pull the trigger on something like that? Do out the math, figure out the difference between watts and watt hours, and really sit down, figure it all out. I think that's something you're gonna be thankful for once you get the unit.
Anyway, we hope you enjoyed that. Please let us know down in the comments things that you'd like us to review. We do EVs, EV charging, e-bikes, e-scooters, e-mopeds, you name it, we do it here. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button because that's how we grow the channel and let more people know about the awesomeness of electric products.
We'll see you next time on Now Let's Review.